I'd like to call the Monday, June 1st, 2020 Oakwood City Council meeting to order. Would you please rise and join me with the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our law director will be acting in behalf of the clerk of courts, and would you call the roll, please, Mr. Jacks?
Mayor Duncan.
Here.
Vice Mayor Byington.
Here.
Mr. Stevens.
Here.
Mrs. Hilton.
Here.
And Mr. Epley.
Here.
And do we have a report on the minutes of our May 4 regular session and our May 18 work session and executive session? Councilmember Hilton.
Yes, Your Honor. I reviewed the minutes and I found them to be correct and complete. Now I move that they be adopted as written.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Everybody in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So ordered. I do have a status report. Saturday was an extremely active day downtown, and we had several Oakwood public safety officers spend the better part of the day assisting with the chaos that broke out. The protest started around noon in Dayton, and at approximately 12:30 p.m., Dayton police initiated a Signal 99, officer needs assistance broadcast. At that time, 2 public safety officers responded to the downtown area. By the time they arrived, the emergency request had been canceled and they returned to the city. Shortly thereafter, a second request was made, and at this time the request asked for the responding officers to bring riot gear with them. 2 PSOs responded. They remained downtown until approximately 10:45 p.m. before being released. They were really on the front line and in the mix of it. They held various assignments such as crowd control, arrest team personnel, and traffic control while downtown. Both of them were exhausted when they returned to the city. Long day with lots of activity. Additionally, at around 2:30, the Kettering Regional SWAT team was requested to respond. The team activated, and 3 of Oakwood's 4 SWAT team members responded. Kettering's team was assigned to protect the Dayton Safety Building. Intel was received that a group of vandals were going to attempt to vandalize the building. Again, these team members were on the front line of all the activity occurring in and around the safety building. They were released shortly before 11 p.m., and Kettering's team has already been requested for Sunday as they anticipated a second day of protest. Furthermore, during the late afternoon hours, a group of protesters began to march south on Main Street towards Oakwood's north city limits. A group of 4 Oakwood PSOs, along with a couple of UD police officers, engaged them just prior to entering our city and forced them to turn on Sawmill heading east. A few minutes later, the same group of PSOs confronted the group of protesters again at Oakwood Avenue and Irving, forcing them to turn north on Brown and heading towards UD. UD ended up with a large peaceful group of protesters in the area of Brown and Caldwell. Given the proximity to the city and limited on-duty personnel to manage a crowd this size, it was at this time a code red personnel recall was placed. 6 public safety officers responded. Captain Jones and Chief Hill also responded. We doubled up the officers and cruisers and actively patrolled the north city limits until about 11 p.m. The vast majority of the rioting criminal behavior took place during the 9 p.m. hour, right after the downtown Dayton curfew took effect. Thankfully, the crowd was able to be managed and dispersed and never made its way back to Oakwood. For all of our personnel, no one was injured, nor did anyone have to use force. Protest events were held again on downtown Dayton late Sunday, and they lasted until the curfew went into effect at 7 p.m. Our response was very similar to Saturday's. With having some time to prepare for Sunday, the law enforcement response was much different. Much larger presence, well-prepared, and strategic plans in place to deal with any instigators. Thankfully, it was a quiet evening and nothing like Saturday night. Our response included 3 SWAT personnel, 3 PSOs assigned to Dayton, 8 uniformed PSOs protecting our north city limits, We believe another protest is planned tonight in the city of Centerville, and at this time we plan to send 2 Oakwood PSOs to assist the Centerville Police Department. One of the probably the most important thing that Oakwood City Council does is to ensure that we provide public safety to all of our citizens. And on behalf of the entire force, Norb, I would ask you to relay our confidence and gratitude, deep gratitude, to Chief Hill and every one of your PSOs. Thank you. I have no other status reports. Any other status reports at this time? All right. We are open for visitors this time. We have an interesting, we have sanitizers, we have social distancing chairs here. An interesting part about the sanitizers, they were donated to us by a joint venture from the Buckeye Vodka Company and Miracle Corp Products. The owner of Miracle Corp, Bill Shirk, is an Oakwood resident, and he graciously donated some of that hand sanitizer to our city. So we thank you, Bill, and we thank you and Buckeye Vodka as well. And we also have a special visitor here. I don't know if he plans on addressing council, but Brian Barr from the Oakwood Register is back. We welcome you, and you can tell we're getting back to normal because the Oakwood Register is going to be publishing on Wednesday, and I look forward to reading it. Hopefully there's no negative letters to the editor about city council. All right. So obviously no other visitors wish to address us, so at this point we will go straight to legislation. I have a resolution authorizing the city manager to issue executive orders implementing temporary waivers to certain regulations and certain enforcement activities in order to promote local business and the state's responsibilities. Restart Ohio. As we are all aware, Governor DeWine declared a state of emergency in Executive Order 2020-01D, which was issued on March 9, 2020 in response to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. A number of subsequent orders have been issued by the governor and by the director of the Ohio Department of Health, including a March 15, 2020 order to limit the sale of food and beverages, liquor, beer, and wine to carry out and delivery only, and an April 30, 2020 order to begin reopening businesses. The April 30 order includes a number of exceptions, including social distancing provisions that limit the options for indoor service while allowing for outdoor service. Council is aware that some of our local businesses were deemed essential and were permitted to remain open through the pandemic, while others were deemed non-essential and were ordered to close. As a result, some of our local businesses have thrived, while others have faced severe economic hardship. Our zoning code does not allow for outdoor seating, except in certain special use situations that are not applicable. However, Council strongly believes that local zoning regulations should serve to benefit our community. They should not be a reason to keep existing businesses shut down. The resolution I am introducing would allow businesses to apply for and the city manager to issue temporary waivers of the outdoor seating rules. Waivers would be available as long as a particular proposal can be done safely with respect to for the residential character of our neighborhoods and adequate measures to minimize congestion and other traffic issues. It is important to note that this is a temporary solution and not a permanent amendment to the zoning code. The authority to issue waivers would last for 6 months from today's date unless the governor's state of emergency declaration expires or is terminated sooner. After that, this resolution will lapse and normal operations would resume under the zoning code. And I move that council adopt this resolution and would ask for a second.
Second.
Do we have any other discussion regarding this resolution?
Yeah, I have a question. So
yes.
The authority to issue so could that then extend, so the city manager could approve something and then could the execution extend into next year? Or?
It would last for 6 months from today's date.
From just from today, not from the date of issuance or?
Oh, That's a good question. No, I think it would be from, you know,
Okay.
I thought it would be 6 months from today's date, Mr. Law Director. Do you concur with that? But again, if the governor rescinds the state of emergency.
Okay, so it's a function of what the governor's saying.
Yeah, it'll only, if he rescinds this, if he says we're now at phase 3 or 4 and everything's back to normal come August 1, then this will lapse on August 1.
Oh, okay.
If he keeps it on for 6 more months, then we would keep this in place for 6 more months.
Okay.
Right. As it's written, the authority to grant waivers, that authority lasts for 6 months.
That's my question. That's my question.
State of emergency is lifted.
Does that help you answer with that?
Yeah, and then if something makes sense and looks like it could be more permanent.
Well, we're hoping that we get back to normal,
okay.
and this would not be permanent.
Okay,
I'm anticipating this not being permanent.
If we needed to do something of a more permanent nature, we'd have to go through with a full text amendment of the zoning code, which would be the public hearing at Planning Commission and public hearings here at City Council.
Yes.
That we'd follow that whole process.
Yeah. Thanks for that clarification, Mrs.
Perfect.
Hilton.
Thanks.
Okay. And I'm sorry, we did have a second. Chris, you seconded it, correct?
No, I did.
I'm sorry, Rob seconded it. Any other discussion? Would you please call the roll, Rob?
Yes. Mayor Duncan.
Here, I'm sorry, yes. I'm here and I vote yes.
Vice Mayor Byington.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton.
Yes.
And Mr. Epley.
Yes.
Thank you. We now have Mr. Stevens has an ordinance he would like to introduce at this time.
Thank you, Mayor Duncan. An ordinance amending Section 375.10 shared mobility devices of the Oakwood Traffic Code to make permanent a ban on the use of shared mobility devices, including the placement or operation thereof in any public right-of-way or on public property, and offering the same for use anywhere in the city. This is the first reading of an ordinance to ban the use of, quote, dockless electric scooters and bicycles in city rights-of-way and on public property. Dockless electric scooters and bicycles, which are available to be rented on demand from unstaffed locations, arrived in many cities suddenly and unexpectedly and proliferated rapidly. Some of the most visible examples include Spin, Bird, and Lime scooters, among others. These shared mobility devices are largely unregulated. Despite some level of public demand, they cannot be used legally on sidewalks due to their status as motor vehicles under state law. Nor can they be used legally on streets due to equipment limitations and the lack of adequate mechanisms for titling, registering, and insuring them. As a result, there are several lawsuits pending around the nation, and the Ohio General Assembly and other state legislatures are considering possible frameworks for the regulation of shared mobility devices. Until the General Assembly determines a path forward for our state, the problems inherent with shared mobility devices must be addressed by local government. In cities where shared mobility devices are available, they are frequently abandoned by users wherever they happen to stop, in streets, sidewalks, doorways, and other public places. This creates visual clutter and, more importantly, safety concerns, especially for the most vulnerable pedestrians. In addition, due to the spontaneous nature of these rentals and their appeal to young people, shared mobility devices are nearly always operated by users, often minors, without helmets. Council initiated moratorium legislation last year as an immediate way to address the hazards posed by shared mobility devices placed in and operated on public property. Our intent was to revisit the issue in 1 year when the legal landscape might have become more firmly settled. Unfortunately, the state has not acted to clarify the law on these scooters, and we are now proposing to make our local ban permanent. This is the first reading of the ordinance, so I make no motion at this time.
Thank you, Councilmember Stevens. We will address this at our July 20 meeting, which is our next scheduled meeting. And then Vice Mayor Byington also has an ordinance he would like to introduce.
Yes, Your Honor. This is an ordinance to amend existing section 17-104.4, right of entry of the Oakwood Property Maintenance Code by adding procedures for the issuance of an administrative search warrant. Currently, our code enforcement officer routinely conducts a number of inspections to ensure that the Oakwood's aging stock of homes is properly maintained, safe, and holds its value. This is of critical importance in a residential community like ours. There are rare instances in which a property owner refuses consent for an inspection, and our property maintenance code provides inconsistent remedies. For example, if a person refuses consent for an inspection under the pre-sale inspection program or the rental unit inspection program, the property maintenance code provides a process by which the code enforcement officer can seek an administrative search warrant from the courts. By contrast, if the need for inspection does not fall under one of these two programs but arises via a neighborhood complaint, the code merely says that the code enforcement officer is authorized to pursue recourse as provided by law, without providing any guidance as to what that recourse might be. The ordinance that I'm introducing tonight would add that guidance. It provides clear administrative search warrant procedures for situations not covered by the pre-sale inspection program or the rental unit inspection program, utilizing criteria that have been authorized by the federal courts. I'm introducing this ordinance as an emergency measure because city staff is aware of an existing property maintenance issue that potentially endangers other properties and must be addressed immediately. With that in mind, I move that council adopt this ordinance tonight as an emergency measure for the reasons that I stated previously.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And by making this, requesting this to be done as an emergency, we will need a 4/5 vote for that to carry.
Correct.
Any questions or comments for Vice Mayor Byington? Hearing none. Mr. Jackson, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton.
Yes.
Mr. Epley.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes our legislation. We do have a city manager's report tonight. Welcome, Mr. Klops.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to report again from here, and I hope at our next meeting I'll be able to do it again from either up front with you or from the podium. Today was an important day in Oakwood in that we reopened public facilities. That would include the city building here, city public safety building, the Oakwood Community Center, and the Public Works Center. And as you know, those facilities have been closed, had been closed over the last 11 weeks. And as I reported at the last two council meetings, during that closure period, we were able to continue to provide the essential public services that our community relies on here. And my hat is off to all of our staff, in particular our department heads who managed their workforce expertly, and again were able to continue the essential services. We sent out a press release last Friday about the reopening, and in that press release I mentioned that a request essentially that to the extent that our citizens can continue to conduct business with the city via telephone or email, that would be our preference at this point. While the facilities are open, we would encourage people to limit their visits here. As we've all seen in all places of business, we have 6-foot delineators for social distancing at places where folks might come to a counter. We have plexiglass up at all the places where we have counters, and we have masks available for folks that might need them. If we have any, we are continuing to limit the number of face-to-face meetings that we conduct, even within staff. For instance, when I meet with my department heads, which we've been doing at least weekly, we come in here and we spread out in this room as opposed to doing it in the conference room like we typically do. So we're limiting those meetings, but when we do need to get a few folks together in a smaller space, we have masks available for that. As I reported at the May meeting, we did have one employee that was diagnosed with the COVID virus, and it was PSO Steve Norris. We hope to bring Steve to our July 20 council meeting to recognize him. He was recognized in the media here for donating plasma after he had recovered from the illness, and so we want to bring him in and recognize him. But he was the only city employee that was diagnosed with the virus, and he recovered actually very quickly and has been back to work now for about 6-7 weeks. The Gardner Pool, as of last Friday, we had sold between 30 and 40 memberships. The pool will open this coming Saturday, and we have a number of protocols in place consistent with state guidance that will make the pool a safe place to visit, but it'll look different and be operated differently than what our citizens are used to. In particular, probably the biggest change will be that where in the past, any pool member could come to the pool whenever they wanted to. Now, for this season, we are going to ask our members to sign up in advance. And yet this week, before the opening, obviously on Saturday, all the folks that have purchased memberships will get an email from the OCC directing them to a website where they can pick and choose the time slots when they want to use the pool. And for each day that the pool is open, and the hours will be 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., we have 4 different blocks of time, 2 hours each, when people can sign up and use the pool. So this will be our way of controlling the number of people in the facility at any given time. So we're excited to open the pool, and my compliments to Carol Collins and Karen Early in particular. Karen is our employee at the OCC that manages the pool every year, gets it ready, and then oversees the operation of it. The dog park opened today as well, and I know that's going to make a lot of folks happy. We have signs up, of course, to keep in mind the social distancing. And then my final comment, just on some construction projects. Oak Forest Drive is not a street that most citizens would drive across. It's only 1 block long, and unless you know somebody there or you live there, I'm guessing maybe half of our citizens don't even know where Oak Forest Drive is, but it's on the north part of Oakwood. If you live in that neighborhood, you know that we just started a significant project to reconstruct the concrete pavement. There's a large area that was ripped out today, and over the next couple weeks, that 1 block will be rebuilt. I started doing work from a consulting firm here in Oakwood back in 1989, and at that time that concrete on Oak Forest had already been there for a while. So I've not been able to look back to see how old it is, but this is the first time that we've been back to repair it, and I would say that it's at least 40 years old. So it's an example of a well-built concrete street, and how long something like that can last. But so we're in a couple weeks construction window now, and of course all the folks that live on that street have been informed of that. The concrete curb work on Far Hills is all completed. That was done the last month or so, 6 weeks, from Patterson to the North Corporation line. Our sidewalk curb and apron program on the northeast quadrant of Oakwood is set to begin sometime around the middle of June, and that'll take a couple, maybe 6 to 8 weeks to complete. We'll have it done before the start of school again. And our asphalt mill and overlay project will probably be completed before we meet again, so before July 20th. Right now we're looking at the week or two right after the 4th of July weekend or holiday. So lots of construction work. I guess one final comment, Vectron is working in 3 different areas of Oakwood this year, and all the folks again on those streets have been given notice from Vectron, and that's going to be probably it started a couple months ago, and I think it's probably going to extend into September, October timeframe. So it's a pretty long stretch for that project this year. That's all I have.
Any questions for the city manager? How have the court operations been able to operate pretty much unaffected?
They have. They started, I think they've had 3 sessions now, 3 or 4. So they took a bit of a break during the early part of the pandemic. And the first week back was, I think, 4 weeks ago, and there were only, I think, 5 or so folks, a very, very light court day, but then it's kind of picked up a little bit, and they have a good process in place. actually scheduling folks for different time periods throughout the day, spreading things out. We've set up a couple shelters out front here in front of the building where well, our prosecutors has been out there, and one of the court workers to kind of go get folks that are waiting in their car when it's their time to come in and have their court hearing. So some extra steps, you know, to keep people spread out and keep the numbers down in here, but it's working.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you for that report. That now we will now go to council comments, and I know at our last meeting I had given everyone the preliminary report that Councilmember Epley was in the lead for the 2nd District Court of Appeal primary, and I believe the results are now in, and you are going to be on the ballot in November.
That's correct, Your Honor. I've heard from all 6 counties, and they've certified their votes.
Congratulations on that achievement, and we wish you luck in November, and it is now time for your council comment.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. I have no additional comments tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilmember Hilton.
Yes, Your Honor. I wanted to commend Norm and the city staff, especially Carol Collins and her team, for all the work on Gardner Pool, because this year especially I sort of paid attention, and even before all this, there are like a bazillion rules in place, and then now they've done all these protocols and figured out how to do it. So I wish you luck, because I know I was so pleased to see Friday that already a whole bunch of people have signed up. So it feels really safe to me, and I'm kind of picky. So.
Very good. Councilmember Stevens.
The only thing I want to comment on is I want to thank the Oakwood School District for doing a fine job recognizing the seniors in this tough time. My personal opinion is they did as much as they could to make it as special and to provide good memories for these 2020 graduates, and I think they did a fine job, and just thankful that the leadership was in place, that they took advantage of that. They knew what they had to do, and because it's tough. I'll tell you what, I have a senior at home, and it has not been fun. So I just want to commend and thank the school staff and the entire district for taking care of all the students, grades K through 12.
Vice Mayor Byington.
Yeah, just wanted to mention that if you're not going to the pool on Saturday, the Oakwood Farmers Market is this Saturday. It's in their normal location, which is behind I forgot what the name
Talbot's, Chico's?
Yeah, Talbot's, yeah. In the parking lot that's back there. I'm not exactly sure of when they open. I think it's 8 o'clock, but I'm not positive. I would encourage folks to take a look at oakwoodfarmersmarket.org, which is their website, or to check them out on Facebook. They do have various vendors who are providing curbside pickup for their merchandise, so you can check that out on their website or on their Facebook page.
Thank you. And dovetailing with that, clearly our Oakwood Business District is now back up and running, and they need your support. A lot of them have struggled mightily through this pandemic, and anything you can do to buy local, either through the farmers market or through our Oakwood Business District, it's the right thing to do. And then the only other thing that I have is we got a report of a citizen in Oakwood who called our 911 because they were experiencing some severe chest pains. Our squad was there in under 2 minutes, and they put him in the medic vehicle and were taking him to the hospital, and he toned in the medic vehicle. Our squad immediately went to work providing CPR and actually put the electric paddles on him, and were able to revive him to such an extent that he was talking to them normally before they got to the hospital. So these are the same people that are out protecting us this weekend, some of the exact same PSOs. If this person had lived in a township or some other wider geographic area, he would not be with us today. And so it's one more great reason why Oakwood is a great place to live. I do remember receiving a note from one of our residents saying, if we have to be, under home quarantine, I can't think of a better place to be quarantined than the city of Oakwood. So we do appreciate it. Again, welcome back, Brian, and I look forward to reading the paper on Wednesday. And our next meeting will be on Monday, July 20, 2020. We are adjourned.